Bonjour, Kinamagi and Ireland and Deshnikas, and welcome to this production of Social Studies Explorer. Today's episode, Chapter 6, Lesson 1, No Choice But to Fight. When we last left off, we had been studying the number of events, particularly legislative events, that led to a bit of a reaction from the colonists. This chapter is what comes next. Throughout this chapter, you will learn why the colonists felt that they had no choice but to fight the British. The Intolerable Acts from Parliament and King George were the last straw. As you read about the shot heard around the world, as well as the Battle of Bunker Hill, you will see how the Patriots gained confidence by standing up against the greatest army in the world. They lost the early battles, but they had the heart to keep going and fighting for their dream of why they and many of their ancestors came to this new country. Freedom. Remember the Intolerable Acts from chapter 5? What does the word intolerable mean? Remember that intolerable means that you can't tolerate it. It's not something you can accept. We'll have a few video clips here in just a moment as well about that. So let's go ahead and watch those.
The government quickly passed laws intended to punish the Massachusetts Bay Colony and to force its citizens into obedience. In America, these laws came to be known as the Intolerable Acts because they made living in Massachusetts extremely difficult. As a result of the Intolerable Acts, extra troops were sent to the colony to maintain order. Boston's harbor was shut down. Trade suffered badly. And the Massachusetts legislature was suspended, disrupting the colony's government. Immediately, committees of correspondence sent off letters. They warned of what might happen if Britain suspended other colonial legislatures, and suggested that representatives from every colony meet to find ways of resisting the Intolerable Acts.
And then also this short clip from Liberty's Kids via the Michigan Open Book Project.
How many do you see, Henri?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
English, Henri, not French.
I'm counting the English.
How many are there now?
Too many. There mustn't be a soldier left in England. What should we do?
What should we do? The British are occupying Boston. I've got to get this to the Gazette right away. Come on, Henri.
Seem ashamed.
Do you really think he's a traitor?
On the evening of 16 December, the year of our Lord 1773, cowardly bandits, disguised as Indians, attacked the Dartmouth, a ship flying the colors of His Majesty King George III. And who is responsible for inflaming the subjects of Boston to this violence? None other than the man before us, the esteemed Benjamin Franklin. His crimes are enormous. The East India Company lost hundreds of crates of tea worth many thousands of pounds. This lawlessness was encouraged by Dr. Franklin in his speeches and writings. His inflammatory paper, the Pennsylvania Gazette, continues to foment sedition, rebellion, violence, treason. You have no honor, sir. You are a scoundrel, sir. Have you nothing to say for yourself?
The heart of a fool is in his mouth, but the mouth of a wise man is in his heart.
Ah, the famous Franklin wit. Perhaps I need to remind you, a rope is the proper reward for treason.
So as you can see, the British were very upset, but so were the Bostonians. And Benjamin Franklin, as one of the founding fathers, clearly was taking heed in that said video about what had happened. As you saw in the videos, the Patriots throughout the Boston colonies were shocked by the intolerable acts. Now that the port was closed, how would they get supplies such as food? They had to hold meetings using the king's agenda, and Parliament would even choose the town leaders. The quartering part of the act would require unfamiliar British soldiers to live in colonist homes. These acts led to action by the Patriots to discuss what the British were doing. They met as the First Continental Congress in September of 1774. This meeting was the first time the colonists met to discuss how to band together to resist the British acts. They wrote a letter to the king and to Parliament protesting the intolerable acts and asking for them to be repealed. They really wanted a peaceful solution, but before the Continental Congress would meet again, it would be too late. Tensions ran high in the colonies, especially in Boston, where more and more British soldiers arrived daily. The colonists began forming militias, an army of ordinary citizens, made of Minutemen, men ready to fight at a minute's notice, who collected weapons. British spies discovered this and sent more than 800 soldiers to seize the weapons from small communities throughout the Massachusetts countryside. The Patriot spies learned of the British plans and sent two men, Paul Revere and William Dawes, out on horseback to warn the colonists that the British were coming. By midnight, every Minuteman for miles knew that the British were on their way. You can see the path. Paul Revere leaving from Boston up towards Medford. Then we have William Dawes on his route, leaving from this direction through Rosebery and Brookline and up towards Cambridge. And then Samuel Prescott in his route from Lexington moving on towards Concord. We do have a couple more video clips here. One thing you can choose to read about if you want to know more about that ride, what happened to the two other men on Paul Revere's ride. Paul Revere was not the only colonist with a horse and a message to pass. We know of William Dawes and Samuel Prescott from the previous page, but there were certainly several others. And this is a source that you can go ahead and read. It's linked into the PDF version. And you can kind of just go through there. I also have a video clip about the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride 1775. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea on the town tonight, hang a lantern in the highest arch of the old church tower as a signal light. One if by land, two if by sea, I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm to every little village and every little farm, for the country folk to be up and on. And then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rode to the Charleston shore.
Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
On the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he gazed at the landscape far and near, but mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church. And lo, as he looked to the belfry height, a glimmer then a gleam of shimmering light. To the saddle, the bridle he turns and pauses and lingers till full on his sight. A second lamp in the belfry burns, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath on the pebbles in passing a spark. And yet through the gloom of the pale moonlight, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and a spark struck out by the steed in flight kindled the land into flame with
remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year,
safe asleep in his bed, who at the bridge be the first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest in the books you read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the field to emerge again under the tree at the turn in the road, only to pause to fire and load. So through the night went his cry of alarm to every little village and every little farm, a cry of defiance, not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and the word that shall echo forevermore. In the hour of peril, in darkness and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed, the midnight message of Paul Revere.
Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Paul Revere.
That concludes this portion of the lesson. You should turn to the Google Classroom for a very brief assignment reviewing the content of this lesson. If you have further questions, please reach out to me during class or via email at mireland@sagchipschool.net. Have a minute, Gijigad, Minwa, Bamapi.